So this isn't like, oh, health tip, don't drink more than 3 glasses of wine a week and turn your phone red. Like, no, this is not a health tip.
Mhm.
This is a fundamental shift in understanding how our biology works and then building our life choices from there.
It's like the next big thing. Come catch the wave, yeah. Yeah, watch what's happening. A force of nature. Hit 'em like lightning. Be the creator of the next big thing. We're the movers and shakers. We are the dreamers, the makers. We stand on top of equators. We are the limitless. We got the future, no papers. We are the innovators. We have the focus like lasers. You know we doing it big. Oh, this is major.
Greetings and welcome to the Compromised Alchemized podcast with me, your host, Dr. Neil Bulchandani. I interview healers, teachers, philosophers, artists, thought leaders, all kinds of people on this podcast. And I love asking this question: what is your personal legend? What do you put on this planet to do? What is your dream? And Paulo Coelho, who I borrowed this phrase from his book, The Alchemist, he'll simplify that all to say, what is your dream? I love that too. Now, the compromised to alchemized phrase came from me saying, how can we go from a compromised airway to an alchemized airway? My wife, Brilliant Dawn, who just defended her dissertation and is excited for what comes next, has said, what about, Neil, if you just say compromised to alchemized? Because it's more than just airway, even though air is such an essential thing, right? But we have babies who also need that milk supply. We have people who need nourishment, like the light we get from the sun and lasers, the nutrients that we get from food, the nutrients we get from connection from others, the love we need to flourish. So it's really a journey, this compromised to alchemized journey. And it's from suffering to healing and integration, from lead to gold. That's a nonlinear process. And it takes a village. It takes more than just a village. It takes outside the box thinking. It takes people willing to go further, right? Push the envelope. So Meredith Oke, who I am presenting on this interview, is someone who has curated all of these conversations on her Quantum Biology Collective podcast, and also some teachers, healers on her Institute of Applied Quantum Biology. And some of you will recognize Nico Kennedy as one who I've interviewed, and I've been on her Substack, the director of research for the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology. That's what she's done. She's collected these amazing educators and healers and information. She knows a lot herself. But, I'll tell you more about who she is for those of you who are meeting her for the first time, and we'll go from there. So she is the host of that podcast, where she connects with leading experts and translates their work into practical insights for the public. She is the founder of the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, which is a nonprofit dedicated to bringing emerging science into real-world application. With a background in media, communication, and executive coaching, Meredith focuses on bridging the gap between emerging knowledge and its application in everyday life. Circadian rhythm, light. She talks about way more. And again, I mentioned that she has also endeavored upon collecting all these resources and people. So I'm very thankful that my episode on her podcast is coming out the day after this one. And the collaboration and conversations to come with Meredith I'm excited for those. So yes, I'm very excited for what you will learn, not only about what this quantum biology word means and what the field is, and there's some really phenomenal insight out there already on that, but Meredith's history and it's really cool. So, yes. Now, I'm also very excited about two other things. Then we'll get to her episode. Well, first of all, the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology. It's a really phenomenal program. I encourage those of you who have any interest in learning a lot more about this. You got other teachers, like, well, let's just say there's too many to list, but you should go check it out. The links are in the show notes. You can check out and find out how you can enroll to this next cohort. You can also just reach out and you can email, fill out the contact info, and hear from the team, Meredith, on more about this if you want to learn more about this program. So, two updates, as I mentioned: Cosmic Mandible, the exciting webinar that I'm launching, and the first one will be in late May next month, and it's all about the jaw, helping so many issues related to proper airway function, proper feeding function, TMJ. But it's not about the mouth, and not just about the jaw, not just about the airway, not just about feeding. It's about whole body mobility and health, unlocking your bodies, unlocking your health and vitality. And it's not about the mouth per se, it's about the whole body. So I will cover some of the concepts from the floor 4 because this is a webinar series. And yeah, so look for that link. I'm excited for you to jump in. It's also got keys on how you can enhance your moonwalk. Everybody's getting excited, right? As I am about the Michael Jackson biopic. And not only that, but about how the moonwalk can enhance your mandibular glide. So stay tuned for that. Also, next week, I'll be hopping on a webinar with Newcom users, those precious people in the community who already are with Newcom, who have utilized the app and this high-level technology that is neuroacoustic technology, vibroacoustics, neuroacoustics, and it's amazing. My tracks are launching within the app, so I'll be on a webinar with Jim, the CEO of Newcom, and we'll be talking all about my phase shift tracks, and that's going to be exciting too. So much ahead. Okay, jump in, enjoy the episode. Can't wait to hear what you think.
This is major.
All right. Good morning, Meredith. I'm so excited for our conversation for my podcast. I've been looking forward to it. And you have so much gold and wisdom to share, which is fitting because my podcast is Compromised Alchemized. And it's all about the journey of turning lead into gold, like the alchemist's story. And that's a nonlinear process that requires, I think, I use the word magic sometimes, but it takes alchemy. It takes to help people go from suffering to amazingly fulfilled and integrated. That's a journey, and I like to interview, healers and artists, and you as a coach, but also with this amazing collective that you formed. I've just been a fan of yours, a fan of the initiative for many for years, and I've really looked up to a lot of the people you've had on, and you as well. So thanks for being on. I'm really excited to dig into your story.
Thank you for inviting me, Neil. I'm honored to be here. And yes, I think that alchemy is the key to human flourishing. It always has been, but particularly at this moment. So I love the theme of this podcast, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with you.
Yeah, so I'll tell you another. This is more like a little silly thing. Whenever I hear the name of your collective, the Quantum Biology Collective, I can't help but think of QVC. And who doesn't think of QVC when we think of like what's the best marketplace on the planet, or at least like Lori Grenier on Shark Tank? She's like the queen of QVC, and I'm like, it's like a gold standard of where you want to have your products if you're in that line. And so I'm like, the QBC is like It's like the QVC of the, quantum biology world, so that's the way I look at y'all and what you formed, so can you
That's really funny because actually the transcripts always put the QVC podcast. I have to go in and correct it for the subtitles.
Oh, I love that. See, it's like it's not, we're all thinking the same things. I wonder how many people think that when they're like, "What is QVC?" Okay, and then their mind drifts to that, so, um can you tell us, just I feel like sometimes I don't wanna dig into somebody's story as much because you've got some great interviews out there. That being said, could you just share the origin of QBC? I want to go back further than that in a bit, but if we could start there, that'd be amazing.
Yes, so the origin of QBC, which is Quantum Biology Collective, and QVC is kind of like the home shopping channel,
Yes,
which
good.
I actually love that. I have come to really embrace sales as just like a very high level medium of communication if you do
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
integrity. And so I love that. I
Mhm.
would love to be the QVC of the quantum biology world. But I came to do this. It started out with a personal health journey. I had, you know, done a lot of spiritual, emotional, psychological healing. And I was like, great, I'm good. I have mastery over my thoughts and I've, worked through some of the more, damage, the more parts of my childhood that were causing problems later in life. And like, I'm good. I'll just stay in this mode. And my physical health will reflect my spiritual health. And that just didn't happen. And I became what in hindsight I realized was uh I had I developed what I realized was chronic fatigue,
Mhm.
where I just could not maintain energy no matter how much I slept, no matter how well I ate, no matter what acupuncture I did, no matter, like I did
Mhm.
all of the things
Yeah,
and the things that are meant to give us energy, like exercise, would just totally deplete me. And
yeah.
I lived in this world of like, I would go on a ski trip with 3 little children, and I'd get through it, and I have memories of, like, sitting at dinner at the end of the day, just, like, with, like, a toddler on my lap being like, don't pass out,
Mm,
make it till bedtime," like,
yeah.
and then I get back from that, and I'd just be, like, flat out for days with 0 energy, like, it would get used up and then go, and used up and then go, and so, in my quest to figure out what was next, because a lot of the feedback I was getting was, "Oh, you have young children, of course you're tired." Then I went to the doctor, and you've heard this a million times, I'm sure, where it's like, "Yeah, my doctor ran my labs and said your labs are normal, you're fine."
Mhm.
And
Nice.
I'm like, "I'm not fine." And the feedback that I kept getting was really around food and micromanaging food, and that is not a fun thing for me. I don't enjoy it.
Mhm.
Micromanaging food, I know some people get really into it. I don't. I just like to have some basic guidelines and follow them and not think about it too much. So I had like a moment where remember I was in my kitchen and I was like, I'd ordered a spiralizer to like turn to turn zucchini into
Mhm.
spaghetti. And
Yeah.
it was like all the blogs were like, your children will love it. It's just like spaghetti. I'm like, they will not love this. They will not.
Right. Yeah. But is that guy really gonna fool them? Are your kids smart enough to know that yes.
Yeah. And PS, I'm not gonna love it either. I mean,
Right.
zucchini's fine, but it's not spaghetti. Like, let's not
Who are
let's
we fooling here?
stay real here, people. And I had this moment, I was sitting at my kitchen and I had, as I said earlier, like I had been trained well. So I know when I'm up against a wall and I get that gift of desperation. And I just let go of everything I think I know. And I said, okay, all right, God, all right, universe, what am I not seeing? There must be something. And I flashed to an interview about the importance of light.
Mm. Mhm.
And bit by bit, at first, I didn't take it very seriously, and bit by bit, I did. Anyway, I ended up taking it really seriously and having finally moving the needle in ways that I couldn't with all the other things. And through that whole journey, I kept thinking, someone's someone's going to have to make this information more accessible, because the stuff I was listening to and reading, I was, I would imagine like my friends or the other moms that I knew, I'm like, they would not, like, they will not do this, but
Yeah.
they need the information. So I kept thinking, wow, when is someone going to take care of this? Like, and I kept looking around, waiting for the podcast or the mainstream or the media or the news articles to pick up this information. And then I had another tap on the shoulder from the universe being like, yeah, it's going to be you. You want that problem solved? You solve it.
Yeah.
Um, so I was filled with insecurity and doubt and didn't know what I was doing, but I was pulled by that larger vision of knowing that, we need this. It is needed. So I showed up and I started figuring it out. And I started looking because my self-doubt was like, I'm not the expert. I'm not a scientist. I don't have even a health background. I have a coaching, you know, executive coaching mindset, career, leadership, that kind of thing. So I thought, okay, well, what do you do in that situation? Like, you find people who do know and you talk to them and you ask them and you get them to develop the curriculum and you get them to, answer your questions. And I just see myself as like the conduit
Mhm.
to access those people and put the knowledge, I would say information, but it's more than information,
Mhm.
and put it out there in a way that people are able to hear it.
Yeah, this is amazing. I have so many points in there that I want to get back to because like there's so much that led to that double tap, 2 taps on the shoulder where you said yes because you saw your your kind of there was a need, you needed things to be easier. You also thought of like your friends and the other moms and it's like, well, yeah. It's like so it's a sign of great, curiosity, but also to distill something to a point where it becomes palatable, pardon the pun, and easy to digest and assimilate, like that's a very great intelligent pursuit that you have taken upon yourself because you didn't see that necessarily out there. And I think it's like really beautiful to take, you'd say like really simple, but it's like but these concepts are so pivotal and foundational for wholeness, health, and existing that it needs to be simple because it's so foundational. So I think, commend you on being the one who spearheaded your collective and it's made a huge impact. I know like how many people have said how much of a mark it's made on them, how you've curated this assortment of healers and educators. So it's a platform of great extensive knowledge. So that's amazing. And I feel like your background may have led you to think in that way. Can we tell you, what started you, what's your coaching origin? When did you start coaching and what led you into that?
So the first era of my career was in media,
Mhm.
and I worked on an entertainment television program, the kind that the internet is kind of driving out of existence, but
Yeah.
back in the day. And I did copywriting and producing, and then I started doing interviews. So my first experience doing interviews was like press junkets. I'd fly out to LA all the time and do press junkets for movies and interview like major movie stars and directors and things like that.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it was really fun. I was like in my 20s, and it was a great time. But then, I have this habit, Neil, of just like being like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. And like just like leaving. I left school early to go work in media, and then I left media to go and pursue, I didn't even know what. I just had this feeling that and I would say it as a joke. I would
Mhm.
say like, "Oh, I can't stay working in television. It's gonna, like, kill my soul." And I was, like, being all, like, "Ha, ha, ha, I'm
Yeah.
25, and I'm so funny,"
Yeah.
and, like, that's obviously not why, but looking back, that actually was why. Like, that was the truth coming out of me in a joking way, but it was real. But I did some entrepreneurial things, and then I I realized that in my entrepreneurial endeavors and working for other people, did work in communications and marketing and things like that. I was always more interested in the personal development piece. So I studied coaching, and then my husband and I made the decision to live abroad. We lived internationally for 9 years. Technically, we're still abroad because we're Canadian and we live in the U.S.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's right.
so that was a wonderful job, or, wonderful skill to have, the coaching, because I could do it anywhere. And so I had, the privilege of coaching people from all over the world, and, you know, developed the capacity to sit with their stories, to sit with the truth of where they were at. And I think that, to me, is the core of coaching. There's all kinds of beautiful frameworks and exercises and
Mhm.
things that we can do that are really important to move forward. But I realized that coaching was a way that our culture had developed um, a capacity for people to have that container of vulnerability and truth that for most of us doesn't exist anywhere else. And most people are capable of connecting with their true inner leadership, with their true goals, desires. They're able to connect with the achievements that are meaningful and purpose driven for them if they're given the space to do so. And so as a coach, that's what I love to do, is to hold that space and then guide and support toward whatever comes out of it, which
Yeah.
is sometimes being a cheerleader and sometimes being the bad guy. That's a skill
Yeah.
that, you know, you have to flip. That was a skill that I learned, I think when I switched from amateur coach to real pro, is being able to be like, actually, you said you were going to do this. Like, what's going on?
Mhm.
um, as opposed to staying in infinite cheerleader mode.
Right.
But truly, yeah, that container of safety to look at, okay, what is really true?
Mhm.
What is really true for me right now?
Mm. Of course, I can't help but think how that's correlating to what you're doing, in terms of what QBC is. But, oh, I want to ask a question too, though. If you could go back to entertainment time where you were flying to LA, junkets, and people that you were interviewing, is there one that like shines in your memory of like one of the most beautiful moments or just powerful or poignant where you're like, wow, pinching myself that I'm here?
Yes, I mean, the whole experience of interviewing actors and directors and screenwriters as my job was the entire thing was a pinch me experience. I was a theater kid. I'd always did plays in high school and middle school and college. And I loved popular culture at the time. So it was like the whole experience was something that I look back on with like great fondness. And I learned so much. And being around that kind of creativity was really deeply inspiring. But it also showed me the other side of that world. That it's not all aspirational. There's a lot of grunt work, to be honest. It's a
Mm,
grind,
mhm,
and there's a lot of nonsense. And it's really easy to lose yourself and to, let your ego take over. But one moment that really stands out is I remember interviewing Gwyneth Paltrow,
mm,
and she did a movie that I think everyone's forgotten about, but her father directed it. So the two of them were doing the press junket together, seated side by side, and I don't remember what I asked. I asked some question, and Gwyneth Paltrow's father went on to talk about how talented and wonderful Gwyneth is and how amazing it is to direct her and how, you know, I think he said something like, directors shouldn't take money for directing her because it's so fun and easy.
Mhm.
And she tipped her head onto her dad's shoulder and she was like, "Do you see why I have such good self-esteem?"
Uh,
And it was just such a lovely moment, um, that and it really stayed with me because it was a genuine like a genuine relationship, and you could see the deep affection that they had for each other. And then a few years later, when I read in the press that he had unexpectedly died of a really like fast moving cancer, I f- I felt really, I felt really sad for her, and it
mhm,
was a real moment to remember that people living their life in the public eye are still people, and
mm,
they still experience pain and loss. And one of the things that I really took away from being around celebrities is that I became much less critical and judgmental of them and of people in general because I could see that at the end of the day they're still just human beings, like, trying to keep it all together, trying to do a creative project that gets put out in the world in front of everybody on a mass scale, and if you think about somebody who feels a little shy, like posting something on Instagram to 500 followers, like, imagine what it feels like when everything you do is scrutinized. Like, it's an interesting path to take, and I have a lot of more compassion for everybody involved in it. And it's interesting, like you have the theme of personal legend,
mhm,
and when we look at someone like Gwyneth Paltrow or whoever we look up, any type of celebrity, we often see them as the legend, and we're
mm,
just over here like, oh, well, I'm just this, I'm just a mom, I'm just a this, I'm just a that. And so I love this idea of seeing ourselves as our own legends in our own lives, but
mhm,
also borrowing from these larger than life people. Like when Gwyneth Paltrow went on to start a business, and I was reading about her talking about, pitching investors for Series A financing, I was like, oh, like that opened me up in my life to think
mhm.
about stepping outside of the box that I had put myself in, seeing her do that. And so, yeah, I do think that early celebrity exposure dissolved a lot of boundaries for me and made it so clear to me that we're all in it together, and the people who are showing up in a public way, take what you can from them, learn from them, and then but don't diminish yourself in any way either.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, this is why I feel like I'm so glad that we got to dig into this part because um your personal legend and the breadth of your career, and you have so much more you're going to do, but it just feels like the complexion of this, or the the things you learned, the people you interviewed, that this couldn't, like, I can't see where it's hard to imagine that this, hasn't shaped so much of the way that you look at humanity, like the way that I hear you talk. And that was such a tender moment, though, right? It's so wonderful that you kind of felt like when Gwyneth put her head on her dad's shoulder, and how that moment marked you. Um, and it was wild because as we're talking about this, the synchronicities are so cool because last night I was uh grocery shopping, and I was listening to this interview. It was Ted Danson, his podcast. Of course, it's this famous line: "Everybody knows your name" from Cheers, right?
Right.
I love his talks. He's so sincere and kind. He was interviewing Zach Braff, and Zach Braff was reflecting on a moment of his career way early, and he talks about Bruce and Gwyneth, and he talks about what they're. I think he talks about this movie. So it's wild how
Oh, that's so funny.
yeah, I know. You tell me about this and that conversation. It's like, ooh, the timing. Um, and yeah, I think you can, as you were talking about um, how you view I think you mentioned like just everybody, their personal legends. Whether you are somebody has a following of 500 or how many millions, like it's there is a similarity. Yet when someone has that exposure to that extent, that's life can be there can be a lot more of difficulty. And challenge. So I just see your compassion, your empathy coming through like with all of this. And so I just wanted to say it's so good because you know that um you held that within you, and then I feel like you hold that nature about you too with what you're doing with QBC, and your interactions. You could just feel that kindness coming from you and that empathy and that care. So I think that's a really valuable amidst all the things that we do in quantum biology, and then in your Hollywood interviewing time. It's like we kindness, we're all one, we're humanity, right?
Yes, and, as I was saying, like, to be able to feel that sitting across from your idols, like, I
Mhm.
interviewed, like, all of like, a lot of really, really, really famous people, and a lot of them were exceptionally kind and gracious
Mhm.
and made it their job to put me at ease. I was, like, 25-year-old, and these press junkets, it's like you get, like, 4 minutes and 55 seconds, and there's someone standing there with a stopwatch, and they're getting a
Yeah.
new interviewer every 5 minutes. And they still, like the real pros, like they would still make it their priority to make sure that you felt at ease because they knew that's how the best content was going to come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like learning from them. I'm like, oh, okay. And the newer people, like the people who are a little less secure in their career and their celebrity and their fame, like they were often the ones who are a little bit more, difficult or standoffish or, occasionally someone went out of their way to like make you feel like an idiot even. But for the most part, it was just, yes, like exactly what you're saying. I think we are all, we all deserve kindness. We're all one. We need to stop putting people on pedestals. And we do it with celebrities, and then maybe later in life we do it with scientists, or we
Mhm.
do it with credentialed experts. And of course, we respect people who have areas of expertise, and we want to like make sure that that we understand what they have to say. But this idea of creating a hierarchy of value as a
Mhm.
human and then abdicating our power to whoever we have put in that
Mhm.
higher place cuts us off from connecting to the wisdom of our bodies, which, your work so beautifully brings people back to. And it cuts us off from the wisdom of our higher selves. So it's like, yes, I really respect Gwyneth Paltrow and I followed her career. And she did an interview a couple years ago. I was feeling really insecure about like doing all of this because my friends were like, what are you doing? And she had a quote somewhere where some journalist was like asking her about, some of the stuff that Goop does or whatever. And she's like, and Gwyneth was like, you know what? I just had to make peace with being the weirdo walking. I am the
Yeah.
weirdo walking. And I was like,
Right.
oh, thank you. And so, like, I could take that wisdom from her, which I think I got through reading Vanity Fair magazine, right?
Uh-huh.
But I could take that and move on with my life and not have it be this, me abdicating my power to somebody else. Just like taking these lessons as we go. And I see in health, in coaching, in career, there is a growth phase for all of us where we have to learn to not do that anymore and
Mhm.
and still accept guidance, wisdom, still be coachable, and yet still totally own our power. And it's an interesting growth phase, but it's necessary.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I mean, I was thinking the word abdicate when, and then you said it twice. I'm like, oh, you're in the conversation with somebody, yeah, because it's definitely something to talk about because it's like when we feel like we need to or we do or we abdicate our voice, our responsibility, our agency, it's like we don't end up, necessarily feeling heard, but also perhaps contributing our voice to a world that needs it. Um, so that was I was going there, and then I was thinking about your um your comment too about uh Goop and I've heard some really amazing interviews with Gwyneth. One of them, I loved hearing the origin story of Goop, and it's so cool as an entrepreneur. So cool to hear it. But I
I
recall.
remember it. I was on the first email list.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I didn't know it then. I didn't really know it then, so I more of like learned about it later. So I'm gonna have to ask you about that. But yeah, what I remember is more about this. As a mom, she was, she was birthing her first, and it was like then that she made this decision to. And she talks about this in some recent interviews too, but she had made a decision to get out of being lead actress and to be a mom. And that was her mission. She's like, I just want to dedicate this time. Well, in that time, she also then curated this list where she was resources for when she traveled and what are the best things to look for when you're in this city or country. And, it turned from a newsletter into this company, which you can tell us about. But I remember hearing it's like that wasn't her goal was to take time off from becoming a lead actress to become this person who launched this massive wellness holistic business that it is today. And I love that because Gwyneth's, mission in that is to interview people and to talk about products that are there to help people, especially when we are in a world that doesn't offer that to us. And so even the voice agency and having those aspects of life come through are really important. So I loved hearing that origin story. But tell me, yeah, what was it like to be somebody who saw her? Yeah, tell me
Yeah, no,
about that.
I just remember I was like, "Oh, there's a newsletter now, sign me up." And I signed up and I read all the little yeah, it was just an it was an email newsletter, and then you watch it evolve. And so, as you were talking about personal legends, right? It's like people who live their lives out in the public eye are evolving in public. But we get to watch and be like, "Oh, she's doing this now. Oh, that's interesting." And also to your point about making motherhood the mission,
Hmm.
I that made a deep impression on me as well.
Hmm.
And I also remember because again, when you're in front of everyone, you're going to get everyone's projections are going to land on you. There were people being like, "Oh, easy for her to say, like she's got lots of money, she can take the time
Hmm.
off, whatever." You know, and I just want to say like I have a friend who's, a comedian and an actress who lives in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
and right now, due to a whole bunch of reasons, a lot of the filming has left LA and is
Right.
being done in other places.
Yeah.
And this friend of mine consistently turns down jobs because she won't leave her daughter.
Yeah.
She's like, I just can't do it. They don't have a lot of money. Like and that was something else I learned living in LA. Like most actors are like middle class, maybe, right? Like,
Hmm.
and she still made that priority. So you have a celebrity like Gwyneth saying it out loud that it makes headlines, which kind of, and she gets all this flack for it, but it's a values, it's a choice. And I don't mean to diminish the actresses who are taking that work because everyone's got a different
Yeah.
path,
Totally.
right?
Yeah. No, I hear
They're
you.
all good, and
Yes.
I'm sure their children are well cared for. But for some people, it's like we just couldn't. It just wasn't our path, and we couldn't do it. And it's not a money thing.
Hmm.
It's just I don't know what it is, to be
Yeah.
honest. Just
Yeah.
the way some of us are.
Well, I really, you like your career arc has, involved this part, and then I mean this as in interviewing, so for the media entertainment industry, and of course through the executive coaching and with your Institute of Applied Quantum Biology and the QPC podcast, it's like what a a diverse career in and of itself, and then and then parallel to that, you see others like Goop launch and from inception to where it is now. And you've seen a lot of things go from uh, a seed to a full blown manifested tree, and I think that's also something that I see when you're, holding space within your corner, if you want to call it that. I mean, okay, here's the other part. I always think of this when I don't think I mentioned it, but so far, but it's like Neil deGrasse Tyson always comes to mind when I think of you, and not so much in the way he talks. You're very different, and he's a wealth of knowledge. But I can't help but think, yeah, there's that, and then there's you with your awareness, quantum biology, quantum physics, the bridge there. I just feel like whenever somebody's holding space within something like this, we're going into those uncharted territories where there are explorations, and I kind of hear your voice in a kin way, where, like, as we journey through the like biological cosmos, and I'm using words to describe, so just extemporaneously, but you kind of stand out to me as somebody kind of in that category of, like, being a person who's in this voyage we have through articulating something that really needs to be articulated. You're a voice and kind of a guide, and um so I don't know, I feel like that's so fitting. You were interviewing others, now you're interviewing others now, but yet, as it is with others too, you are somebody who um is not just the one who asks the question, but your words can carry people through, facilitate learning, facilitate journey consciousness. So, ooh, I don't have a question, but I feel like I really want a question here to ask you something. I just love that. I'm not gonna make one up, but I'm just gonna say, like, does that does that feel like to you something that you carry is, like, not just a person who's posing questions, but as like a, you know, uh somebody who's bringing people on a journey? Do you feel like you inhabit that role, or you that resonates with you?
Thanks so much for saying all that, Neil.
Mm,
Yes. Yes, and I think of it exactly that way.
mm,
You've intuited exactly my goal, which is, um, to help people connect back to themselves. And I don't really know that much about science, right? Like, I'm an English major. So I I feel like, you know, the the thoughts that I had, like, oh, you shouldn't cover this topic or use those words, even using calling it the quantum biology collective. Initially, I my goal was to have it be other people, and I would just kind of coordinate in the background.
right.
But that was logistically really complicated, and then I realized, no, Meredith, like, you need to use your own voice,
Mhm.
and you need to open the door, because we're at a moment right now where nobody needs to understand quantum physics or even biology at a super deep level, but we do need to understand it at least a general and a high level in order for our civilization to move forward. I really, really think that.
Mhm.
And I really believe that feeling like you have even a light connection to the science is really meaningful, and it shifts the paradigm in a way that, like, the new age movement can't, because they don't have that rigor. And so I do my best to translate, when I talk to high level scientists, to translate what they're saying in a way that can have an impact on a regular non-science person, so that the wisdom of it all can drop in a way that I don't think it could if we didn't do that.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I'm tracking with it. I'm going into the words that you're saying, thinking about that, because you do that. And yeah, I couldn't imagine. I mean, as it is, a parallel universe where Meredith Oke is not QBC collective. Like, what? who would that be and who would I be talking with? Would I be talking with anybody? No. Would Nico exist? Just kidding. She would exist. But y'all would exist, but no, there's no it is you, and it is an embodiment of you and your heart to I think the word collective is so important in what you're doing because it is about bringing people together. And you mentioned like your goal is to, like it's about people. And I think you are the best person to hold this space because science cannot exist without people. So even when you mention, of course, that you thought about having other people on, it's like, but they wouldn't have or you have this thread of connection, interconnectivity, compassion, empathy that really matters. Truth is important, but truth without connection is like, no, those are just facts. So I think you're bringing that thread of humanity and that thread of connection that is necessary for us to even consider our place in the cosmos. So I think about all that. And then I think, yeah, I feel like when you're interviewing someone and your mission isn't it's clear. It's like you're interviewing some people who have some knowledge and they're just sharing some really high level. And I know you mentioned the higher view. It's like the overarching view of like, but deep down, like what's somebody that's going to help people and what's something that's going to help us move together as civilizations on this planet that are wanting to further our time. And yeah, that I think it's so important. So I feel like it's such a good to distill things down to very simple is so necessary for us to even decipher what is this. And without that, it's not practical, it's not grounded. And it's not going to really help move the dial. So I feel like you're doing all of that. And I think it's a really, very tactical way, but I know you follow your intuition on it. So I think that's a really cool blend of what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And I've learned, I mean, obviously I've learned a lot, but I've also learned that like the scientific mind, like the person who becomes a scientist
Hmm.
is like a very unique character. And they're the way that they see things and what they're willing to do. I had a scientist in who does he looks at like measures biophotonic emissions
Hmm.
and in a lab in Prague. And he was talking about some research that was done in Russia, and they were trying to figure out cell communication. And they were measuring these cells in petri dishes on a regular, consistent basis for like 30 years.
Wow.
And I was like, who stays that long on the same project measuring the same things? And he was like, the scientists.
Right.
Like, yes, like their discipline and their rigor and their commitment to specificity. um it they're able to track and measure and observe things and explain what is going on. And so i I just say that because I do have a profound respect for scientists and what they bring to the table. And my goal is to try and translate it. And that being said, once you take what's learned and implement it in the real world of messy actual lives, I mean, you work with patients, right? Like,
Hmm.
well, the experiment in the lab said this, but they controlled for this and they controlled for this and they controlled for this. And out in the real world, like, you don't know who's going to walk through your door as a practitioner, and you don't know what their context is going to be. And you might not get to control for all of those things. So we're sort of, yeah, translating that deep scientific work into real messy actual life.
Yeah. Well, I think this is I'm also a fan of and thank God for these amazing people. I mean, I have methods and data and all of this, but I view myself as an artist first who also
Mhm.
does these other things. So because for me, I'm like I need to follow the art of something, the heart of something. That's my strength. Whereas I look to colleagues and those that you mentioned, those that I hear on your podcast who embody the scientist role. I'm like, that is amazing. Um, that is a very, very specific kind of mind or kind of application of mind that is there, and we are necessarily at a place that we need all of these kinds of minds to contribute to the cause of bringing humanity forward, because we can't do it on our own. And so yeah, so I I
Yeah.
often say when I see others who are doing things like that, I'm like, wow, I value that so much. I'm not like that, but I value it so much because it's vital.
Yes. And I mean, it used to not be as these barriers used to not be so strict. I was having a really interesting conversation with a podcast host called Cameron Borg from Richie Flow podcast, and we were talking about how scientists used to study philosophy and art and literature, and you didn't necessarily have these rigid boundaries and silos. Even and then now we have, even within science, we have rigid boundaries and silos. That's why it took so long to acknowledge that quantum effects happen in living systems, because biology and physics didn't talk to each other. That was like, you like were risking your career if you tried to do like a cross-disciplinary conversation like that. So in we are, I think, coming back. And I think the practitioner researcher, the practitioner scientist is a hugely important role, like hugely important. Um, bringing in some of those, some of the methodology of the scientific world, and then, but then studying it in with actual people living their lives. It is an absolute art.
So then I'll ask you, so because I know your people, our people, the people who know, because I need to be clear to bring up what is like a hallmark concept that you teach on, or that you also, a lot of your people with QBC will talk about, which is obviously circadian
Mhm.
rhythm and light. And I will jump into that even deeper. But to when you reflect back on all the things you've done, and even those moments, I'm sure you've gone through this, but you can't help but think like back, like what if you knew then what you know now? Like, was there anybody that you go back in time and you're like, oh yeah, when I interviewed that person, I could clearly see that they they either valued light or they needed light, or you know, eh, let's just, I don't want to pair it or simplify it down to just light, but more like with all that you've kind of learned in the quantum biology sphere, when you look back at those times, is there anything you look back and you're like, wow, yeah, if I could just go back and talk to that one person, or just even think about that time you interviewed this person, or your work in entertainment in general, like what, how do you think about those times now, and what comes to mind there when I ask that question?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I look back on that and I think how much stress that life puts on people's biology. And we did not think about that at all. Right.
Mhm.
And I recall doing an interview with a very, at the time, one of the most famous like comedic actors in the world. He had a big franchise. I won't say his name, but he was like so
Okay.
awful. He was like
Oh.
just the rudest. And I think back,
Oh.
and he was also like pale and
Yeah.
sweaty, and
Yeah.
and I just, it's like that lifestyle, you're under fake lights all the time as part of
Right.
your job, you're doing night shoots, you
Mhm.
you're like, your time is not your own. You're under, you're surrounded by all of the equipment all of the time. And okay, fine. Like, I'm sure most of the people wouldn't trade that, but without understanding what that's doing to you, you're also not compensating for it, right? Like right now, we see a lot of the NFL coaches are getting really, really, really into red light because they're like, oh no, our athletes are falling apart, and we
Yeah.
can't necessarily change their training schedules or their travel schedules or their whatever, but we can supplement with red light or we can get them outside. And it's like we need the all the agents in Hollywood. We need every and like, oh, in the music industry, like the music industry is even worse because then you've got the noise as well. You've got that sound, and you interviewed John Stewart Reed, so I'm sure you talked about that, right? Like
Yeah.
how sensitive we are on the quantum scale to noise. And so on the one hand, you're living your dream as a performer or a musician or an actor, and you're getting all of these accolades. But on the other hand, and it's you're trashing your mitochondria, which as we know are basically the source of life, right? So even as I said, if you wouldn't necessarily change those things, at least understanding that's what you're doing
Mhm.
and then compensating for it in as many ways as possible. But people don't understand that. Like I have friends in LA who are in that business, and I'm just, and one of them actually had me on her podcast. And they do their best, but it's like it just I don't know, it doesn't land, and it
Mhm.
it is, I think, a real problem
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, no, that's great. I get to see, I know you're bringing up that, the person was really pale, but I could hear also those comments of like you're conscientious towards the circumstances and the environment and the system and almost like the engine of Hollywood, or we could just call it Bollywood, even in India, or,
Mhm.
there's the Bollywood of, the India is there's the scene there where it's performance. And well, even for this, I've got my bright light shining in my face because I want to make sure that I'm not in the dark shade. Also, oh, I'll mention this later, but it's so I can hear your compassion and your empathy come through for like the circumstances that somebody grows up in. They might not know, or even if they do know, they might have the knowledge, but they might feel like the trade-off isn't possible. Or I hear that phrase all the time where somebody's like, well, a little bit matters, I know, but I'm like, if I can't, like, I know that I need to deal with that, but I'm just gonna put it off because I know that right now it's just too much. And I know that that's sometimes what gets people is you can make little changes every day that make a massive impact. I work with a lot in the industry here in LA or between Santa Barbara, Montecito, and they tend to be some of the more health conscious ones who have learned a lot thanks to like people out there who, like in your space where you have provided knowledge so people can learn. So now a lot more in the industry are like, or they're going to do all these kinds of, they're going to wake up and sun gaze and see the sunset. They're going to do whatever they can when they can.
Yeah.
So
Put
that's
a
a lot.
like, put red lights in the makeup trailer,
Yeah.
right? Like, what
Yeah.
if you had red light panels? I mean, obviously, okay, maybe a bit hard to put makeup on properly if there's red light, but,
Yeah.
like, maybe the hair trailer.
Yeah. There you go.
Just there's so many creative ways to insert it in if you're
Uh,
thinking along those lines. Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah. So I feel your compassion coming through for these people, which I just wanted to note that. Like I can see because
Thank
you're like the coach who you point out what's wrong, but you also want to nurture people. So I feel that like when you're sharing information, it's really like in knowledge. Let's call it that. Like you said, it's not just info. It is like the building blocks of life. And so can I know, talk about light as it pertains to what would we be like if we didn't have light? So obviously we all have it. um okay, so yeah, if you could tell me, presume I'm like from another planet that doesn't rely on the sun at all for powering. Maybe they rely on their 20 something moons, or I don't know, planets in another galaxy where I don't even know what their makeup is like. Maybe they rely on the crystalline structure of ice to power their bodies, so they're powered by ice and not the sun. Explain, what is it like to have light as the power source for who we are, and can you tell us where we get our light from originally?
Yeah. So, I mean, originally, mitochondria, which we're all filled up with, lived outside of our bodies. I mean, we're going way back to
Yeah, let's
prehistoric
do it.
times here, right? But lived outside of our bodies. So it developed all of these sensors. And listen, folks, I am not a scientific historian, okay? I'm giving you like the high level overview here, but I find that really helpful. I always like the high
Yeah.
level overview because I need to wrap my head around the whole picture and then I can go into the weeds. Okay. So the mitochondria lived outside of our bodies. So they developed all of these environmental sensors, including to the sun, which is why we have life on Earth. Is our sun is the sun is the source of all light, all life. The sun is the source of all life. Now, over time, as through evolution, the mitochondria became part of our bodies on the inside, but they maintain that ability to sense their environment. And humans evolved outside. We evolved being outside all day long and being in the dark, either in the pitch dark of a cave or in whatever was going on. If there's a full moon, we had a little light. If there was no moon, we it was pitch black. So we evolved for hundreds of thousands of years in that state. Outside all day, darkness all night. And even as we developed, we maintained that. Like we started to wear shoes, but they had leather soles. We started to have light at night, but it was fire. It wasn't until really you know, in the historic terms, the last 30 seconds that we've had artificial sources of light. And as our technology has evolved, as our ability to build things has evolved, we've systematically created a lifestyle that cuts us off from that connection to nature, which is the source of our power, the source of life. And so the chronic illness epidemic that you're helping with so beautifully with your work, Neil, is so much of it can be traced back to our systematic disconnection from nature, which we are. Nature is not something we visit when we go to the park. We are nature. We are by human biology is a part of the ecosystem of the earth. And the more that we are disconnected from that, the more work our bodies have to do to overcome that disconnection, and which makes us more sensitive to everything. And then on top of that, our environment is firing all of these things at us that didn't exist, chemicals and microplastics and food sprayed with things and blue light from our screens and Wi-Fi and cell towers. So our bodies are, on the one hand, struggling to manage all of those non organic inputs. And on the other hand, we're cutting ourselves off from the organic inputs that would give us the strength and resilience to manage those stressors better. So we've, for the most part, created a perfect storm of, of debilitating our bodies and ourselves. And the
Mhm.
fact that we're not sicker than we are, I mean, we're pretty sick as a
Mhm.
civilization, especially in industrialized nations. But the fact that we're not even sicker, I think is kind of a miracle. Like I look at it is the statistics are really depressing in terms of cancer and diabetes and obesity and autoimmune disorders. Like it's off the
Mhm.
charts crazy. But the fact that we're still walking around and okay, it's just a testament to how unbelievably resilient human biology is. So I would love, my goal is for us to just understand that a little bit better and, uh, you know, improving our light environment, understanding that when we shine a cell phone onto our eyeball when it's dark outside, like we may as well just like get a straw and stick it in the glyphosate bottle. Like
Mm.
it's so so toxic.
Mhm.
And so this isn't like, oh, health tip, don't drink more than 3 glasses of wine a week and turn your phone red. Like no, this is not a health tip.
Mhm.
This is a fundamental shift in understanding how our biology works and then building our life choices from there.
Mm. Wow. Took us from the cosmos to the compromise, right? You just like it's true, but it's the potency we need to know in terms of thinking about how important is this and how pivotal is it when you know what you know and when we make those judgments and like what because I think it's like it's gonna happen. You're gonna get around fake light. We're gonna get around the blue light. You're not saying don't get around it. You're saying I mean, there's things we can implement. You have tons of resources on that, on how we can manage this. But just know, first of all, that that is happening. Because if there's cognitive dissonance, then you might, just be doing a lot of things unintentionally to damage your health when you could be making little simple foundational steps to optimize your well-being. Or like you said it's like some people we're not at that stage. We're not like, how can I optimize? How can I enhance? You're like, you're sick and struggling. And so how can you like feel better? I think there's one oh yeah, there's one you know, you mentioned when you were uh explaining your own story as a mom holding your toddler, like you were like feeling like you like don't pass out. I mean, that moment really struck me because I mean, it's like, whoa. So I just think of like the moms that I take care of, or just like thinking of my wife and birthing three kids, and thinking of other people who they don't have kids, or but it's I can't help but think of one person who like would get done with work and she would walk in to her house after a full day of work and she would pass out unconscious on the floor. And her energy was being so drained. She didn't know all the reasons why. She was pursuing a lot of resources. But I want to go back to that moment because I'm like, there's some people in that right now where they're like, oh my God, that like to them, that didn't feel like Meredith Oak's power story of overcoming. They felt like I'm in it. I'm like, somebody else is saying this thing. Like, don't pass out. Don't pass out. And look at where you are today. I would, presume like you've come a long way to somebody who's stuck in that moment right in their minds where they're literally saying today, like, don't pass out while they're holding their toddler or doing their work or anything like that. First of all, a message of hope for them would be amazing. And like, like a minute on hope for them, but also like what's let's not assume it's light, but let's presume that could be a big part of this. But like, what would you say are like a few things that they could do today to come back to like that conscious state where like they can just feel at ease in their bodies without having to like watch out for that they're going to pass out or that they're going to, feel so sick. So could you touch on that for us?
Yes, and I appreciate this question because I know, especially for moms, uh, that feeling of not having enough energy is really it's terrifying,
Yeah.
and it's really, in a way, like soul destroying because you look, I would look around. I'm like, I have this beautiful life. I have these beautiful children. I have a husband I love, and like it's a struggle to remain conscious sometimes.
Mm,
And I felt almost like a failure, almost like what is wrong with me that I can't show up better for all of this, all of these gifts that I've been given, all of these blessings. And I relate so much. I developed a technique that I called micro napping, where
mhm,
because that's I didn't have much time. That's the other thing too, right? Like there's never any time. Like, so I would lie down on the couch or sometimes even the floor, and I would close my eyes for like 4.5 minutes and just allow my body to like completely shut down,
mhm.
and then come out of it and have some energy back.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It wasn't just light. I also realized that I was pushing myself too hard.
Yeah.
I didn't build in restorative time to my day. And I remember I got an aura ring a few years ago, and I was like, I don't want to wear this. I don't want to wear this. It's just going to tell me that I need to exercise more. I know. Okay, I know. But I was working with a trainer and a physician. They're like, just try it. So I put it on, and Neil, the ring, would start sending me little pings.
Mhm.
I had it on airplane mode, by the way, for the EMF conscious mode.
You're
Uh,
right.
it was sending me little pings, and it was like, "You didn't have enough restorative time today. You're not gonna have enough energy tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh, right." So
Yeah.
then I'd be like, "Okay," the ring said I needed more restorative time, and that was like, "Yeah, you sit down, relax for, like, 5 to 10 minutes, we're not talking hours." And I was like, "Oh, so unloading the dishwasher and listening to a podcast is not restorative time?" No,
Right.
Meredith. Okay. All right. Got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but within that, you know, the the larger piece, right? And the larger piece, even than saying the light, is honoring cycles,
Mhm.
honoring our natural rhythm,
Yeah.
honoring the way that our biology works. And the way that our biology works is to have bright days and dark nights.
Yeah.
And when we screw that up, we make everything worse.
Mhm.
And I know it's hard. I remember bringing this up to a mom who had, like a toddler in an elementary school, and she just looked at me and she was like, "Oh, another thing to worry about.
Yeah.
I have to worry about the light on their iPad." And she was almost angry with me for
Mhm.
mentioning it. And
Yeah.
I totally relate. I
Right.
totally relate. We are so overwhelmed, as I said earlier, with like this and this and this and this and this.
Mhm.
It can feel that way. And so my invitation is to just drop it and to say, okay, we appreciate understanding the difference between processed food and real food so that we can make choices as we go along. Do we
Mhm.
never eat processed food? No. Of course we eat processed food sometimes. Happens. But we know the difference.
Yeah.
So my invitation is that if of all of the things there are to take a minute to download and understand and put in your consciousness, the difference between crappy light, processed light, and real light, the difference between the street light coming in through the curtains and true dark in your bedroom is are just as important as understanding the difference between junk food and real nutritious food. So I would open that up as an invitation to the moms. And the beautiful thing is that, in my experience, most people do find changes happen fairly quickly. Like that's the beautiful thing about circadian rhythms is
Mhm.
that once you start giving your body what it needs, you've probably noticed this with your patients, right? Like the shifts can happen.
Mhm.
It took me a long time to fully heal from chronic fatigue, but I noticed shifts immediately.
Mhm.
And then that shift was like, "Oh," and that gave me a little more energy to like take the next step and the next step and the next step.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many salient pieces of wisdom that you received to help you and that you just gave. I think I want to hone in on one thing. Well, mention it and then we can move to a few other like really poignant things too, but that phrase that you kind of were told and heard that like listening to a podcast, doing dishes isn't restore like first of all, you had to like you had to understand that the doing and these things are they're not restorative, because you weren't using that time to regenerate. Again, I'm not putting this on you in that circumstance, but there's some people who are like they're living in a kind of like a setup or a structure where they're like, I just can't, I don't have time. And they have too much to do in the amount of time that they do. I know that that's a mindset sometimes, but then there are other circumstances and setups where they're just, so to be given the voice and agency to know that wait, I need restorative time, because I think moms can be like, we got to do all the things we're doing, and that is part of who we are as moms. And as a dad, I take that on too, and I'm like, well, because if I'm busy and I'm not home with, if I'm working and then I come home, I'm like, the least thing I want to do is do the dishes, and clean up at night so that, my wife and kids can wake up with a house that's not messy. Well, I'm going to listen to a podcast and that is restorative because I'm getting to do something that I wasn't doing. So I kind of wanted to say, like, for those out there who you're like, pitching in to help out, and there's, for some of us that could be a version of restorative, but for you, you were not having space to yourself to like regenerate. So that regenerative time. Oh, I also wanted to mention this preaching to the choir, but like how much we can go, food's important. I know it, right? We can go a lot of days without food, right? Truly. We need nourishment and all that, but we can't go much without air. So I talk about airway in terms of my field. But what I tell people too is like, yeah, food and air are vital. But how much can we go without light, and electromagnetism? And like these are nourishments. Like these are things that we need to survive. And if we don't get these inputs, like good chance, like good luck flourishing. We need to be nourished to flourish, and we need good light. So, I'm gonna step back into my character. I don't know if this, when I painted the picture of who you were talking to,
Mhm.
I I sat in that role of this being from another planet who was powered by ice for about 10 minutes. Just and then when you said Neil, I'm like, who's Neil? Oh yeah, that's me. No, I'm kidding. I was I was so deep in character, just listening. Nobody knew it in the world until now. But I pictured I was this person from Pleiades, something like that, another planet. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
fall back in character of this being who is powered by ice, and I'm like, okay, Meredith, you seem to have a lot of awareness about humanity and human biology needing light. Sun seems cool, but what is the sun? I'm gonna ask you this question because I was listening to Jack Cruz interviewed by Aaron Alexander on the Align podcast. I was just messaging Aaron the other day, and I was like, I love your interviews too. So Jack, Aaron said to Jack this question of like, what is the sun? And I'm like, oh, I love that you just asked him this question. So
You
falling
have
back to
3
character.
hours for the answer?
Yes, I do. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Um, as this being from Pleiades, I ask you, like, so what is this sun?
Honestly, I don't know. And I don't know because that is a question that has so many different answers and not a lot of consensus.
Mm, interesting.
Uh, I will say I'm leaning towards thinking of the sun as plasma. There is a lot of work. I have not covered this work on the podcast yet, but I'm considering it. Uh, you know, the idea that plasma is conscious
Mm,
and that the ether is real, which, in terms of communication between humans and our environment and humans and each other in a nonverbal capacity, that really opens up a whole new world because I find that, there are people who okay, well, let's get it back up for a sec. So quantum biology, intersection of quantum physics and biology. As
mhm,
you know, as a molecular biologist, biology does not accept or even entertain the idea of physics playing a role. There is now ample evidence that it does. So I find there are people who come from a more esoteric view of the world, a more energetic view. And they're like, and I explain what quantum biology is, the intersection of quantum physics and biology. And they're like, uh, of course. What do you mean? People didn't know that? They're
mhm,
just like, that's not that interesting. It's not that new. And it still is, because what quantum biology does is provide sort of scientific mechanisms of action that can explain some of these more esoteric things like, cellular communication and telepathy and whatever else,
Mhm.
energy healing, sound healing, all of it. And then there are people who are like, what are you talking about? That makes no sense. There's no like quantum effects in biology. And it's not even quantum effects in biology. It's like biology is quantum.
Mhm.
Soon
Mhm.
the phrase quantum biology ideally will be irrelevant.
Mhm.
We'll just understand that, of course, right? Like I interviewed an astrophysicist who in retirement has started studying quantum biology. And I said, do we need physics to explain biology? And he was almost annoyed. He's like, of course we do.
Oh,
Of course,
right. Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Meanwhile, I'll talk to somebody who's in academia in biology and they'll be like, okay, okay, woo woo lady, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
Anyway, all of this to say that there is a very wide ranging ongoing conversation about what all of this means, including what the sun is.
Mhm.
I have a friend who opted for the sun is conscious.
Mhm.
The sun is a conscious source of energy, and she during her morning light time started talking to the sun, and she got answers. She, she felt responded to, and heard responses. So, you know, what is the sun? I will leave that to wiser minds than mine to truly answer. But I will say it's much, much, much more than we've ever thought. It's not a random ball of gas, different gases. That I think is a, mechanistic reductionist view that we are moving away from. It is the source of all life. It is the source of all light and the source of all life, and potentially a portal to expansiveness that we're only just beginning to understand.
Love that. Okay, so that's good. I feel like the I know I'm gonna be really wanting to have you on another time to delve into some of the things that we just talked about, because I love all those concepts, and I have my own mystic practices where I love dwelling on, meditating on, and yeah, the conversation with the stars and the cosmos is really important. But kind of coming back to the way that you answer this question. Right. I think you're somebody who also you think of all the people out there because you're like a shepherd of many. Meaning you're not just speaking to the people who already know what you know. You really care about the people who don't know it, and that means you want people who might even they just might be blank slates, tabula rasa, who are like, "Oh wow, that's awesome, Meredith. Now I'm gonna integrate all the things that you just taught me." They might also be a diametrically opposed person who is very anti what you're saying, or at least thinks we don't really need to know all this. Meredith, it's we have evolution. Yeah, well, Darwinian evolutionary biology does not explain humanity well because it's very reductionist, and so I think when I started studying quantum physics 20 years ago, I uh, I think it was really important to have that differentiation. I was going to mention this to you the other day. I'm like, if we don't have something to distinguish and to separate, like Newtonian physics now, a lot of people say, right? So we needed the term quantum physics in order to understand that we couldn't rely on the understanding of old. And I do very much think we need the word quantum biology because too many people look at biology as the biology we knew. I think Bruce Lipton, we owe him a great amount of credit. I was just talking with Shamini Jain the other day, who's done some work with Bruce. Bruce spoke to the Lyceum. It's the homecoming that I attended as a first year, chiropractic student in Palmer Davenport back in 2005. Bruce Lipton spoke to us, our group, and we were so inspired. And I love this talk on epigenetics. But you know what he talked the most about was grounding, negative ions, electrons. And I'm like, here's one of the, great scientists and the great minds. And he's making sure that we know, guys, get your feet on the grass. And there is a source of electricity and power that we are so without. So I think similarly, we need quantum biology as a way to differentiate of the biology of old, the disempowered biology, the biology of the Western world, the biology of allopathic. We need to go to that place. And then I think I was listening to your last podcast with he's the guy who is the author of the Ricci Flow podcast. I can't think of
Oh,
his name.
Cameron Borg. Yeah.
Cameron. I was listening to Cameron's talk, and I appreciated how you said that eventually we will not need the word quantum. It's just biology. Yet I think we need it because we need to know that there is something different than what we've all been taught. Because it's a very intentional what we've been, well, maybe this goes into that category of things we cover in part two. What are we told? What lies are we told? What facade of reality are we shown by structures that be? Because we can't agree to that. We have to agree to a different way. So I look at you as an advocate for truth, and advocacy for truth takes boldness. It takes willingness to counter conventional norms. But it also takes a person who has an origin story like you, who came from that place of lethargy and fatigue and compromise to the gold of alchemy and togetherness and integration. And you now have this like blazing passion to well, then I was gonna say dot 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 or a blank space. That I want to ask you this question that I love asking people, but it feels like I really want to know this because I feel like I know, but I don't. What is your blazing passion on this planet? What what are you really like if you were talking to this being from Pleiades and you're like, somebody who is somebody who hasn't ever met you, but at the same time, what would you want people to know? What is your personal legend? What do you put on this planet to do? What do you believe you were given to know and do that nobody else was? And um, I'll explain the context in one sentence to say in the book The Alchemist, Santiago the shepherd, who's the protagonist, is asked this question or given this phrase by Melchizedek, this mystical king on a bench, that really describes the whole book to me in a lot of ways of how he pursued finding his treasure, finding the treasure that he saw in his dreams. But that mystical king said, "The universe conspires in your favor when you are in pursuit of your personal legend." So yeah, what is your personal legend?
Oh, that's beautiful. Uh, my personal legend is to be a bridge from the known to the unknown, from the accepted reality to the cosmic reality. And I don't really consider myself a, a wellspring of specific knowledge. I feel like I am the connector when I find that I am meant to be the bridge through which that knowledge can travel to
Hmm.
reach more people if it is grounded in truth. And we live in a time where we are so manipulated by so many different inputs. So our biology is being manipulated, but so are our minds, so is our consciousness, so is our ability to feel empowered to make choices. And I feel like I'm the bridge that goes through that layer that is kind of covering humanity right now, that is sort of enveloping us to the other side to tap in, find the people, the knowledge, and bring it back through the layers to those who are ready and willing to hear it.
That is, yeah, I see it. I often see in visuals when somebody's talking, and I was like, wow, you're just on the threshold, in consciousness. And I love that. I was thinking about that word bridge a couple times earlier in our conversation, how you you so are, and how you are a necessary corridor. More than that, this infrastructure of support. You mentioned safety. You mentioned you've intentioned your life to build something as a scaffolding, and that people would be able to come in contact with something on the other side of that bridge that they wouldn't have been had they crossed that threshold. And so I saw all kinds of emanating light from that bridge, and the sun powering that bridge and more. And yeah, you got this fire, this fiery halcyon, like blazing. Um, I know that's there. So thank you for illuminating, shining that light brightly. It's just gonna, I know, keep illuminating more and more people, and more structures. So yeah, the part two of this question is I really want to know also is, I look at the legend word, and I've kind of extrapolated this. Paulo, the author of The Alchemist, he looks at the word legend, personal legend, as what's someone's dream. I said I also saw personal legend meaning your destiny, calling, purpose, what you put on this planet to do. And I think that's in there too with what he says. But then I take creative liberty to say, okay, but legend is like that key on a map. When
Mhm.
Rand McNally or any map you might look at, and you're looking at that place on the bottom right or whatever it is, and you're looking at like, oh yeah, so to go from like that place to that place on the map is about 10 kilometers, but it's like an inch on the map. You might see like the forage or water demarcated by blue. Those are symbols, right? But what is a key in your life, or what are keys? And I mean this to be a question of like, how do you stay blazing with that passion to pursue your personal legend? What are the practices that you have in place, if any, or like what keeps you aligned with that? Maybe when you're looking for clarity at certain junctures in life, or um, maybe even like on a day or days where you're like, you're not blazing with that because life and its stresses. But what keeps you in that place, and how do you kind of keep tapped in, tuned in?
I really appreciate this question because yes, there is whenever we take a step and we take a risk, the doubt floods in. I
Mhm,
mean, and so, I cannot tell you how many times that part of my consciousness that wants to protect me has come up, has like bubbled up and said something along the lines of, "Who do you think you are? Who do
mhm,
you think you are to be doing this? Why are you doing
mhm,
this? You're going to get in trouble. You're." And it's a continuous like navigation of, not letting that doubt lead, but also being aware when I am overdoing it or when I am pushing too hard, or, oh, I really want, like, oh, I'm going to connect to that person. And there's like that feeling in your stomach that's like, mm-mm,
mhm.
don't do it.
Right.
It's not worth it. Oh, but and so I've become extremely, I will say, I'm quite disciplined about listening
Mhm.
to my intuition
Yeah.
and, and not engaging where the red flags are. I just don't
Mhm,
engage. I just do not go there. Um, I'm compassionate to my self-doubt, but it's not in the driver's seat. It's like, "Okay, thanks for sharing. We're gonna keep going." And the source of the energy for me is that I have a much, much bigger picture of existence than just this one life.
mhm,
Right. I remember during COVID, I was following a journalist who was extraordinarily courageous in his coverage of the mRNA research rollout and
mhm,
so forth, and was a very early critic and received untold amount of pushback from people who had previously been very devoted to him because he was also against lockdowns. So he got a big fan base with the lockdowns, and then he turned on the shots, and everyone they were viciously attacking him. And
Mm.
someone said in one of the comments, like, how do you keep going? I don't get hate like that, by the way. I'm just but and they said, "How do you keep going and keep doing this when everyone hates you, the media hates you, your fans hate you, like, everyone like, you could." And he said, "I don't know, in 100 years, we'll all be dead, I may as well tell the truth."
Yeah.
And that just stayed with me because it's like, "Oh, well," like, what I this is it feels high risk, but I'm not a soldier out on the front lines. I'm not in a physically dangerous situation. I have been given so many gifts and privileges and blessings in this life. Like, I may as well tell the truth. If I can't, who will? Who can?
Mm.
If
Mhm.
I can't do it, who can?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is a through line to your story too, it seems. It's like if, you were tapped on the shoulder, you were like, "When's gonna somebody gonna, do this?" And you're tapped on the shoulder, given that you. It's like, "Meredith, you." And you're like, "But, how many people might not
Yeah.
feel
Huh?
like."
Me?
Yeah. Me,
And
first
that's
of all.
leadership. That is the same advice, that is the
Yes.
same when I work with women and men as well, right? It's like
Mhm.
you're in a meeting, you see a problem in your company or your division or your whatever, and you're like, "Oh, someone should really deal with that." Oh, oh, me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, you're, not shirking. You're owning, you're taking, you have the voice, the agency, and you take the call and you put it, you welcomed it, and it sounds like you're continually welcoming that in the face of opposition or just like challenge. And so you mentioned something too I loved, intuition, and then before that you mentioned, yeah, when you're like, talk to that person and you felt it in your stomach. So feeling it in your body, that's something obviously you've cultivated, is just being aware of when you feel something in your body that can give you a clue, red flag or green flag or any of that. So are there, other places that you feel things in your body or your mind, or, how does that input come in sometimes when you're tuning into intuition?
Yeah, a lot of the time it's in my stomach. Like, if it's a should I engage with this person? Should I
Mhm.
reach out to this person? Should I continue with this person? A lot of the time when it's a relationship one, it's in my stomach and it's like that tension, like that tensing, right?
Mhm.
Like when I talk to you, like I feel completely relaxed. But there are other people and everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? And it's like you even just imagine in talking to that person or being in that person's presence, and there's like a tightening in my gut, like
Mhm.
like almost like a girding of the loins, like, oh,
Mhm.
you know, and that's my body telling me. And then other times it's just like this that's with relationships, and then with moving forward with an idea.
Mhm.
Because I
Mhm.
have like a million ideas a day. So I also have to be like, okay, parking lot, put that in the parking lot, put that in the parking lot.
Yeah,
But
right.
then there's one, it's like, no, do this. Right. And that's more of like a full body kind of, am I feeling pulled towards this? Or is it an idea I came up with? So I put it on my to do list and now I feel like I have to do it.
Yeah.
And that, that other intuition is more like a full body one. And then I just periodically, and usually not on any kind of schedule, just when am feeling the the buildup of whatever, I just like take a step back from everything, like all of it, and take a step back and be like, okay, are we like what stays, what goes, what's happening next? And I get wide open. And sometimes I've, you know, turned things off that I'd put a lot of work into setting up because it was like, nope.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's not just like a frustration move, it's like a deep knowing, like, nope, that's not the way forward right now. take your energy back from that, cut your losses. You learned so much, you needed to do it for some reason, but no more. Turn it off.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really this gold. I mean, I think that's also so applicable. Like you said, like people know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
I think we all have this sense, we have this ability, and then but with refinement, with practice, with continually exercising this ability, you grow it into something quite powerful, and like you have. And then when you are using it to make decisions, like we're utilizing our intuition and our knowledge and our empathic abilities to make decisions that are really important, of course, for ourselves, of course, but then you're leading a organization. You are, I think that the stakes raise, and that's why I think it's good for others to hear from you on this, because um, the more you scale, and I don't mean in quantity, but the more you intensify and uh, build a gift, build a strength, especially something. I think I talk about intuition in the empathic realm a lot because it's so pivotal to existence for me. And it's also how I do most of my work is that leads. My knowledge is way second or third. My intelligence is, that might be good, but um, I'm way more likely going to rely on my empathic abilities and my intuition, because they see things I cannot see. They see things I cannot know. And I feel that's, what guides you. And then you've helped facilitate that in others too. And I think that's a beautiful gift to, of course, share. So, um,
Yeah,
I think it's,
just to bring it full circle,
yeah, please do.
r living aligned with nature's light and dark cycles opens up our intuition.
Hmm.
We
Yeah,
become more intuitive,
absolutely.
um, and we the capacity for that enhances. I have so many people who are like, "Oh, I've" just our awareness in time and space of where we are, of
Mhm.
where the sun is in the sky, of what that means, of sensing the space between us and the source of all life. Um, yeah, it is a huge intuition enhancer. And I totally agree. Everyone knows what it feels like. It's just we don't always pay attention
Yeah. Oh,
or
I love it.
allow it to lead. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I was thinking of this, mystics dwelling in a cave. They might have been, but you know what? When the sun was out and they were enjoying the sun, they were given input and downloads, and anyways, I think there's so much to nature informing us and educating us and giving. We are nature, right? So it's like when we are separated from what we are, we are, dissociative. So I feel like getting in tune with nature. Oh boy, 1,000 hours outside, like Nico, right? She shout out earlier, or it's brighter days, darker nights. I love her publication on Substack. I love your collaboration. She's doing, director of research for your, Institute of Applied Quantum Biology. I feel like there is infinite wisdom, that's there, and so I love that you brought it back full circle, because it's such a vital key. So, oh, I want to do part two. I mean, I want to do part two like today. No, I mean, like, I would love to do an interview with you, where we just talk about the sun and maybe all of those concepts. But I'm going to leave that to a little bit of time to unfold. And I want people to know that you are blazing with this advocacy for truth, and so much, like you just shared. So if people want to get in touch with you, learn more about what you do, everything's going to be in the show notes, but I would love for you to just share with how can people um, follow you, learn more about what you do, and then some words to leave people with as we come to our conclusion here.
Yes, you can find everything at QB C pod qbcpod.com. We have a free community that we host. When you join, there's like a few little free videos on circadian rhythm, and then a feed where you can ask questions and just be around people who are doing this. So if you feel like a bit of an outlier in your life, everyone's like, "What are you talking about? Like, why are you doing that? Why are you wearing orange glasses when you watch TV? Like, what?" This is just a place to have some community around that and not feel weird. And we do live Q&As. Um, and it's just really fun. So that's the best place, qbcpod.com. And then the Institute is for practitioners who want to dig into the science a little more. And we're rolling out a pilot program where we are training them to do practice based research so that we are able to measure the work, like the type of work that you do, right? Where you're having all of these incredible insights and incredible results. We're the next phase of the Institute's goal is to develop um, the methodologies to capture all of those results so that we can balance out all of the lab research that's being done in a very systematic, controlled way, but needs to be balanced out with the messy reality of life and how these things play out with real people in the real world.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. Maybe the sun will be the third one. The second one, we'll dive into more of all the things that you're building out with the projects associated with the institute, because there's so much that one of my exciting things to get connected with you was when Nico was talking to me about what you were doing. I was like, I love that, and I can't wait to delve more into that. So yeah, I'd love to talk about that more too. So
Fantastic. Yes, we're actively recruiting. If you're a practitioner and you see clients as a coach or patients, uh, we would love to have you come join that
yeah, and
table.
I've been talking to all my students who come through my training. You got to go learn. And I'll be sharing more and more about that coming up too. So,
Oh, thank you, Neil.
yes, Meredith. Well, thanks so much for being a an advocate of truth, and love to hear more of your story. And this is only part one, so I can't wait to delve more into this with you. But thanks for being here. I really appreciate you, and that you're just going to keep your light blazing and keeping other people, illuminated and in health.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for the work that you do. It's just so important, and I think that it's the way forward. And
Mm.
adding on to your clinical work, this beautiful podcast, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Really,
Okay. Well,
it all.
thank you. You're so kind. I love your words. Okay. Well, hang out with me for a moment here, but I'm going to say to everybody else, just thanks for being on this journey with Meredith and me on the Compromised Alchemized podcast. Send this to somebody who needs this message. Share it, and I can't wait to hear what you think as well. So, thanks for being on the podcast, Meredith, and till next time. Thank you for listening to the Compromised Alchemized podcast. Really excited to thank Jessica from Lunalux for the music. This track called Major. I want to thank Toshi, who originally did the design work for my cover art. And then I also want to thank Alyssa from my team for podcast publishing, and my whole team, including Kat, for heading up my world. And then also definitely want you all to follow me on YouTube, follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcast. Comment, give us a rating, and also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Neil Bulchandani so you can stay tuned to my latest. Thanks so much, and you have an amazing day.